what we're doing on Sunday mornings isn't really necessarily like officially the Rooted thing, but since there's so many people going through this Rooted experience, I thought it'd be a good idea that I'll just kind of follow along and hit the same topic. So we're all kind of on the same page. Not everyone's doing Rooted, and not everybody's schedule allows and all that, and I get that. So this kind of helps you get caught up and let you know what the rest of your church family here is going through. We're talking today about the topic, where is God in the midst of suffering? And that's a question I think we probably all ask. We've covered that here many times through the years. It comes up in Scripture quite often, actually, that God is with us, and He's for us, and He helps us, and He's a protector, and it's a time of growth, and there's all these different things we can talk about what happens in suffering. And the thing is, I guess the reason why we can do this often, talk about it often, is because you're either, and I hate to say it, but you know it's true, you're either suffering now in something in your life, or you're coming out of something that was challenging or difficult that caused suffering, or you're going into it. I mean, that's just the cycle of life that we're in. It says in the book of Psalm 90, our lives last 70 years, or if we're strong, 80 years. But then look at what it says. Even the best of them are struggle and sorrow. Indeed, they pass quickly and we fly away. That is the Bible's poetic and gentle way of saying life is hard and then you die. I mean, wow. But it's true. It's true. It sounds harsh, but if we're honest with ourselves, we know it's true. How many times have you been in just a hard time at work, whether it's an overbearing boss or a coworker that just doesn't work well, or you're underpaid or underappreciated or whatever? We've all been in situations at work where it's just so much pressure, and even now, the fact I brought it up, you're like, oh, it's tomorrow. I mean, it just hurts your soul. We've all been in that situation before. Or what parent has never had a conflict with their child? What marriage has never had obstacles or tough times that it has gone through? If you've been married long, that you've gone through times. If you own a home, it's a never-ending list of things wearing out or breaking or needing updated. It's like it never ends. You're just like, oh, can't I just live in this house and let it be? Well, that'll cost you. You can buy a brand new truck and within 8 weeks run into a tree and break your taillight. I may have done that. Bummer. It's okay now, though. And that's like light stuff. Heavy when you're going through it, but then there's like really serious stuff. Like you go to the doctor and they give you a very serious diagnosis, or a friend or a relative, family member, or whatever, a life-threatening type health problem. Or you have a friend or a relative who tragically dies, and then there's this loss. I mean, that's not just get up tomorrow and sing or whistle a tune. It is tough to go through. A relationship that you thought would last forever is now like in ashes. It's destroyed. It implodes. The joy of a pregnancy that ends in this unparalleled sorrow. Cheryl and I went through that twice, and it is hard. It is hard. Sometimes things happen, and it causes even the most devout Christians to ask, like, where's God in this? I mean, you have faith, and you understand. Your faith tells you He's there, and you try to encourage yourself with that. But on the inside, there is there's heartache, and there's darkness, and it's hard to crawl through it sometimes. And it's times like that when we cling to verses like Matthew 11:28, come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. How many times have I prayed, okay, God, here I am. Here I am. Give me rest. Give me joy in this. Or Psalm 147, He heals the brokenhearted and bandages their wounds. How many times you clung to that verse? Or Isaiah 54, though the mountains move, the hills shake, my love will not be removed from you. My covenant of peace will not be shaken, says your passionate Lord. Your world feels like it's falling apart. I'm still here, He says. I'm here. I'm with you. I will not depart from you, says the compassionate Lord. So our faith tells us, well, God is here. He's with us in difficult times. We know He's the healer of our soul. but it's still at times gut-wrenchingly painful to go through these seasons of life. And I would love to tell you, just quote these verses, just recite these. You get up every morning and recite this verse, and it's going to be fine. But that's not how it works. That's not how it works. Our faith does not keep us from hard times. What our faith does is it helps us in hard times. The Apostle Paul knew this first. Do we know what's going on with this? I'm going through a rough time right now. The Apostle Paul knew this firsthand, that we are, he said, we're afflicted in every way, but not crushed. We're not crushed. Here's a guy who'd been afflicted in every way. We're perplexed, but not in despair. We are persecuted, but God hasn't abandoned us. We're struck down, but we're not destroyed. As he told the church in Corinth, he'd been through all that stuff. He'd lived that. It's when you are afflicted that you find out how strong your faith really is. Now, you don't want to, it'd be kind of nice just to know, I got a strong faith. You don't really know it until you're really afflicted, though. It's not until you are perplexed that you discover the mental fortitude and how strong you are going through that season of life. It's when you're perplexed, or persecuted, that you discover God really is with you. I mean, I know He's with me, but that's when you're persecuted, you're like, no, I know He's with me. Even though I went through hard times and bad things happen, I still know He's there. It's when you're struck down, like Paul said, that you see that God is always there to pick you back up. He's just there. I'm reminded about the great people of faith mentioned in Hebrews. My mind goes there instantly when I think of faith and hard times. In Hebrews chapter 11, the author says, what more can I say? Time's too short for me to tell you about Gideon and Barak and Samson and Jephthah and David and Samuel and the prophets, who by faith conquered kingdoms, administered justice, obtained promises, shut the mouths of lions, quenched the raging of fire, escaped the edge of the sword, gained strength in weaknesses, became mighty in battle, and put foreign armies to flight. Women received their dead, raised to life again. I hear those stories, I think, man, that's exciting stuff. That's like the middle of faith. That's like the middle of God stuff moving in your faith. But then you think about it, these are all stories born on pain. It wasn't like walking down the street, I think I'll shut the mouths of lions. No, somebody shut the mouths of lions because what? A lion was trying to eat him. Call that rough time? Rough day at the office? Yeah, a lion attacked me. I mean, rough times. Someone quenched the raging fire because they were surrounded by fire and were going to die. And somehow God intervened and quenched the fire in that situation. Someone escaped the edge of the sword. Why? Because someone was what? Trying to kill them with a sword, But they were saved from that situation. They were mighty in battle. You know how we know they were mighty in battle? They were in the middle of a fight. People were trying to kill them, and they happened to win. Women received their dead, raised back to life. Man, that's cool. Except that means someone they loved died. Now it turned out well, but they didn't know that. When they were in the midst of grief, and they were in the midst of the pain, and they were in the midst of burying, you think of Lazarus and Jesus when He raised Lazarus. He'd been buried for 4 days. They weren't just going, well, see Him again someday. No, it was grief. It was pain. Sometimes God does some amazing things. That's not the norm, though. Sometimes He does. But get this. Those are like the good stories in Hebrews 11. Those are the ones that end well. Almost got burned to death, but got out of it. Lion almost got me. Escaped it. Some guy tried to kill me with a sword. Didn't happen. The next part of these few verses go, and some of them they went ahead and did die. Other people were tortured, not accepting release so they might gain a better resurrection. Almost like God said, you want me to save you? Like, no, I'm good. Let me go. Resurrection's coming. This is eternal. I'm an eternal soul. They can't do anything to me. Whoa, that's faith. That's faith. Verse 36, others experienced mockings and scourgings as well as bands and imprisonment. They were stoned. They were sawed in two. They died by the sword. They wandered about in sheepskins and goatskins, destitute, afflicted, and mistreated. The world was not worthy of them. They wandered in deserts and on mountains, hiding in caves and holes in the ground. All these were approved through their faith. But they did not receive what was promised, since God had provided something better for us, that they would not be made perfect without us. All this stuff they went through, like they didn't even get to see Jesus. At least we have Jesus. They just knew Jesus was coming. All these people, their faith came alive in the midst of the most difficult times of the life. Torture, death, beatings, rejection, imprisonment, abandonment, torn from their families and their homes, sawed in two, hiding in caves. And where was God in all of this? Well, they understand he was right there with them. That somehow it was okay, whatever. The guy's coming at me with a sword. I might live, I might not. God's still with me, I'm good. Wow. Now, there's a test of faith. John and I went to Joplin, Missouri this week for a teaching convention, and one of the preachers brought up the story of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and it was kind of cool. So did Tim for communion today. And here's three guys who've been torn away from their families in Israel. They're drug off to Babylon. They're being retaught culture, reprogrammed in their mind. They want them to become Babylonians, right? Worship the Babylonian gods and live like Babylonians. And one time this large statue was constructed that Tim read about, and all the people were to bow. You know, the music would play, and they were all supposed to bow. And these three guys had determined, no, we worship God. We're not going to do it. And it came for the big event, and the band started playing, and all the people bowed down before this monster statue, like, oh, okay, we'll just do what we're told. We don't want to ruffle any feathers, you know. But not these three men. They just stood there. Do you think their pulse was racing a little bit at that moment? Knowing that some really bad things were going to happen, all you have to do is bow down for this idol, this statue. And they're like, oh, no, we serve the living God. That's not for us. And there they stand, the three of them. And in Daniel it says, if you don't worship it, you'll be immediately thrown into the furnace of blazing fires in chapter 3, verse 15. And who is the God who can rescue you from my power? This is Nebuchadnezzar. I am the great Nebuchadnezzar. This statue is all about me. This rule is all about me. You're not about what God's going to save you from this fiery furnace I have? I mean, get serious, three guys. Go ahead and bow. Who's going to save you from this? And verse 16 says, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego replied to the king, Nebuchadnezzar, we don't need to give you an answer to this question. There's some impressive fortitude. I'm not going to answer your question, my friend, Mr. King. You don't impress me. If the God we serve exists, then he can rescue us from this blazing furnace, the blazing fire, and he can rescue us from the power of you, the king. Like, who are you, Nebuchadnezzar? I mean, I know you're impressed with yourself, and you have this cool statue, and everybody's bowing down. I'm not impressed. Oh. And I love that in verse 18. Even if he does not rescue us, we want you as king to know that we will not serve your gods or worship the gold statue you set up. Live or die. Just for the record, our God can do whatever he wants. Throw us in the fire. If he wants us to live, you can't kill us. Oh, king. Kill us. All right. Maybe we'll live. We don't care because God's with us. God's with us. These men, in the midst of a real life and death situation, put their faith, their trust in God. They were okay either way, whatever happened. They weren't going to get mad at God if they died. They'd get to see him. They just put their faith in him, knowing he'd be with them. And as the story goes, as maybe you've read before, a miracle happens. The men are thrown into the furnace. The furnace is so hot that even the people throwing them in die. So it's not like it was a wimpy fire. No, the people throwing them in the fire died, and the three guys are in there, and they're walking around, and somebody looks in there, they're like, there's four people in there. Like, that's weird. What? Trying to figure that out. And they ultimately come out, not a hair on their body singed. How does that happen? Not an article of clothing burned. How in the world does that happen? We don't always have to understand why we go through hard times, but we have faith, knowing that God is there with us. And he's no less God if we happen to burn in the fire or if we're saved. He's the same God. He just has a purpose that's bigger that we don't understand, and we don't have to know that no matter what the income, God is with us. He is with us. Even Jesus, right before going to the cross, took 3 of his disciples with him, and he told them, I'm grieving deeply to the point of death. He's obviously distraught. I mean, he's going to be taken, like the cross is about to happen, and he knows that. They don't know that, but he knows that. And as he's about to enter the most difficult time of his purpose on life, he goes to the Father and he prays, "Can you let this cup pass from me?" And he ended his prayer with, "Not what I will, but as you will, Father." Now, a lot of people think, well, he's probably talking about the pain of the cross. And I don't know. I think it's beyond that. I mean, he knew. I mean, he's not worried about pain. It's going to be temporary. He knows the resurrection's coming. I think he's really grieving over the fact that he's about to come everything dark and dirty I've ever done. He's about to take on the sin of the entire world. Everything you've ever done, every thought you've ever thought that was not appropriate, everything you've ever done that crosses a line, he was going to take all the sin of all the world upon himself so that he could bury it and kill and crucify sin itself. That's that weight of the world. And he's like, "Okay, Father, I know there's a plan. I know this is how it's going to go, but man, this sounds horrible. Is there a plan B? Can we do something different?" And he did that 3 times. Prayed it 3 times. And each time, he's like, "Not my will, but yours. I know you're with me. I know how this ends. I'm just kind of throwing it out there. Okay, there's not a plan B. Let's go. Let's get this done." Often when I go through times of difficulty, I'll think of James 1. "Consider it a great joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you experience various trials. You know that testing of your faith produces endurance. Let endurance have its full effect so that you may be mature and complete, lacking nothing." Honestly, I hate that verse. When you're going through a hard time, consider it pure joy, Dan. But I also love that verse. Because I go, God's doing something. Man, I hate this. Man, I love this. Whatever it is I got going on, he's with me. He's with me right there. Where's God in the midst of suffering? He's right there beside you. Whether you know it or not, whether you feel it or not, whether you understand it or not, he's there right with you. That's the take home. He's right there, growing you, shaping you, carrying you when needed, like that old Footprints poem, maturing you at every turn. Man, I'm not half the person. I wouldn't be half the person I am today if it wasn't through some of the hardships I went through in the past. We're not fun, but God molded and shaped and grew me. I don't know if I'm lacking nothing yet. That probably means there's more suffering in my life to do and more molding of God to do. My mind went back for some reason to a preacher I met in 1994. I've told you about him before. At the time, we smuggled Bibles into China, and we met this guy named Samuel Lamb, Pastor Samuel Lamb, at a house church that he led, and it was in his home. And we took these Bibles to him so he could disperse them to Chinese Christians who were very much underground. It's illegal to do what he's doing. Matter of fact, when I met him in 1994, he had just come out of 20 years of hard labor prison in China. I'm sure hard labor prison in China is a lot different than the county jail here in Polk County. I don't think he sat back and watched television in his nice little overalls or anything. Not to put anything lightly, if you've ever been in there. But hard labor for 20 years. Matter of fact, he'd been in prison 3 times in his life for the cross, because of the church. All you got to do is close the church. He says, nope, not going to close it. 20 years. Okay. When I met him, probably half of his life, at least, had been in prison. again, hard labor camp, not like just laying around, in hard labor. And it impressed me. I was so impressed with his zeal for serving God that even after spending half of his life in prison, having family members die while he was in prison, and he never got to say goodbye or hello or anything, and he'd come out and he'd just start preaching again. I mean, when we went there, we're sneaking in and trying to, like, it's just secretive. Okay, we're like big giant white guys walking down the street in mainland China, you know, the average height is this. And I'm walking down the street thinking, I think they notice me, you know? And there's like 12 of us, or however many, I can't remember. We're walking down the street single file, like, la, 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 and randomly go into a house. They know where he lives. They knew what was going on. So whoever was watching him was definitely took note of this. But God provided and protected many, many times. It was interesting. I was looking for a picture. I thought, I'm going to show a picture. I've talked about him before. I thought, maybe there's a picture out there of him. And so I found this picture. I thought, that's cool. That's the guy. That's the guy I talked to in 1994. And then I started digging, and I found a video of him in his house where I met him, where we handed off Bibles to him. And this video was taken like within a year of when I met him. It's just like, I mean, it doesn't mean much to you, but I'm like, man, it just brought this flood of memory. So I want you to listen. We're going to show you, it's a 3-minute little video. I want you to listen to him, how unimpressed he is with the weight of the Chinese government upon him. He's like, there's whatever. And how impressed he is with his God, who has always brought provision. And he's talking about the persecution of the church. He's talking about him and his church, but then he transitioned to another church situation he was aware of, with the police surrounded. He'll explain it, and I'll get out of the way. I want you to see firsthand a guy who impacted me deeply, even though it was for a short amount of time that I knew him, and 1994, so a few years ago. Let me show this video.
Before I went into prison, our audience, every week, not more than 400, only one time. After I came out from prison, up to 900 3 times. 1990, 3 years ago, they closed our church, confiscated many things away. Before confiscation, we have 900. After confiscation, now we have 11 to 1200. You see, the more persecution, the church grow. And the government asked me, you preach again? I said, yes. Oh, we closed the church. I said, you had closed, but they come back again. You called them not to come. I said, you had called them not to come, but they come. Oh, you must be careful. I said, I'm ready for the 3rd time. Because I've been twice in prison. I said, I'm ready for the 3rd time. Praise the Lord. And within this few years, people crowded and crowded. Tonight, you see many young people. 80% are young people. One house church in Luoyang, in central China. They had a house church in the countryside, about 300 people. One time, the policemen round their house church. After that, they went in and gave him a paper, called them not to have your assembling in this house. You may go to the church. That's the official church. And call them to sign and fingerprint. Do you know fingerprint? Many people sign their names and fingerprint. At last, 5. Don't sign. Don't fingerprint. And then they threw them to a truck and called them to the government hall. They beat them. But 5 of them, they said, no pain. But the hands of the policemen firing, very hot. And they take a basin of water and put the hands in the basin and beat them again. No pain, but very hot in the basin to beat again. Then they took the electric probe, sparkling, but no hurt. Then perhaps this is not no use. Another one, sparkling, no hurt. Oh, at last they said, you go back. Call the 5, go back. And the head of the policeman believed Jesus.
That's the guy. That's his voice and his excitement. And I'm like, dude, you've spent half your life in prison. And he's excited. Oh, I get to go back, I hope, you know. I said, wow. So also this past week, I think what started this whole thing was a video a friend of mine shared about a Ukraine church that 3 weeks ago, a guy was there and just took a phone video, so, you know, it's like not professional by any means. And he took a little video and somebody posted it and somebody shared it, and I saw it and thought, whoa, then I shared it. So some of you might have already seen this in something I had shared. And I was just curious, you know, I saw the video, I thought, oh, I wonder what's going on in a Ukraine church in early February. And I click on it, and my first reaction was, man, that is beautiful music. I mean, it was just beautiful. And then I'm listening to it, and I'm going, I recognize that song. Like, that's a song we sing. And I thought, whoa, wait a minute. This is a song of the future, the song of blessing, of God's provision, of God being with you at all times, no matter what's going on, good or bad. And I'm thinking to myself, whoa, wait a minute. They're in this church service knowing their nation is surrounded by tanks and soldiers. There are impending threats coming in all the time. We're going to attack, we're going to invade, it's going to happen. And they know that means an invasion would mean death. It would mean bloodshed. For many people, maybe them, maybe their relatives, definitely their country, life would change. Terrible atrocities would happen. And if Russian would happen to take over the government, the first thing they would do is shut down what they're doing. Church is illegal. Christianity is illegal in communism. Probably they would take the church leaders and have them executed publicly. Probably everybody on that stage would be executed because they want to make an example, like, don't do this, don't do this. And I'm watching this video, and I Googled real quick the words to the song, and I just kind of read it along as they were singing. The Lord bless you and keep you, make his face shine upon you, be gracious to you. This is weeks before the invasion happened. They knew it was coming. The Lord turn his face toward you and give you peace. May his favor be upon you and 1,000 generations. Look into the future. And your family and your children and their children and their children. May his presence go before you and behind you and beside you, all around you and within you. He is with you. He is with you. He does not leave. Whatever happens, he's beside you in this. In the morning, in the evening, in the coming, and your going, and you're weeping and rejoicing. He is for you. He is for you. And that chorus, the video starts with it, is they're singing, amen, amen, over and over. So be it. This is truth. It's not a warm, fuzzy song that makes us feel good. This is truth. Whatever happens, God is with you in this. We're going to watch that video, and I encourage you to worship with our brothers and sisters in Ukraine.